session, and we're going to just do a quick talk through two of the key department's tools we have to support schools with benchmarking their expenditure with other peers, other schools. The two tools are the online Schools Financial Benchmarking website. That's free and available to anybody. It's just sitting there on gov.uk. So it's designed in a particular way to have that wide audience. So it's a mixture of people working in schools, parents, interested groups, and as a result the dashboards are designed in a very easily communicated, simple way that you can get to grips quite quickly with what the tool's saying. The second tool is our VMFI Financial Insights tool, and this was developed after speaking extensively with schools about what else would help them in their actual financial decision making. And that was developed and launched a couple of years ago, initially to the academy sector and then extended to maintain schools last year. Both tools are extensively used. The benchmarking website gets around about 20,000 hits a month, which is great. And VMFI Financial Insights, since its launch, around 90% of academy trusts have been in and used it, and around 60% of local authorities have engaged with it. So again, really good figures, which means that's great. But for both tools, we're really keen to make sure they keep helping you, because that's what they're designed to do. So at first, I'm going to hand over to Dan Tovey. Dan is the product owner of the benchmarking website, and he'll take you through that with a quick demo. Thanks, Dan.
Obviously, Gavin's just mentioned our usage statistics. If anyone has their mobile phone on them, we're actually having quite a light month at the moment. So if you want to get on and up the numbers ever so slightly, you should just feel completely free to do so. I'm going to go to a school that I present with all the time because I used to work there. And I think it's still outstanding, so I always take credit for that at the beginning of the presentation. So what we've done, I'm going to make it a bit smaller, a bit more visible hopefully. What we've done recently is we've actually tried to bring as much of the site onto the front page as possible. The idea being that it's easier for users to find all of the more interesting bits of the site, hopefully, if anyone has used it and this is really new. So please do come up to me at the end and let me know if you've got any feedback about it, because it's still in progress. But essentially what we've done is we've brought the main points to the fore. If you go to find your school, you can still get to all of the details tabs. But what we were finding was that having a map to where your school wasn't perhaps the most important thing for someone who worked in the school to find when they went on the benchmarking site. So instead we've relegated that to the second page and brought the dashboard, which we see as the sort of beginning, earliest surface level start to a benchmarking journey, onto the very first page. It's actually showing up a little bit less well on a PowerPoint than it does on the screen, but it's a bit more attractive here with grey boxes. Sorry that you can't see it up there. But what we've essentially done is taken the self-assessment dashboard and brought it all to the fore. So you can now click through our tabs and you can see how your school is performing against similar schools in a range of metrics. So if we look at supply staff here, Kingsdale spends quite a considerable portion of its expenditure on supply staff. Being over 2.8% of its expenditure, we therefore flag this as red. I should say at this point that one of the myths we try to bust as much as possible is that the reds and the greens don't mean good and bad, which is quite a hard one to push against. We understand that. But they really are just to tell you that you are an outlier in that particular spending category. So if I was to go for something like teaching staff, they're spending a lot of money on teaching staff, but they're a school. So that might be a really good thing and it might be part of their operating model. We're really not trying to be judgy about that. We're simply letting you know where the outliers are. It can be a bit more cut and dry with something like energy. I think if you're massively overspending on your energy contracts, this is one of those areas where we would like you to go and have a look. Back to you guys being helpful for my analytics. What we'd really like users to do is to actually click through and go to see the full dashboard, partly because you get better usability, partly because I get a little ping in an analytics program that tells me who's using what. But this might look a bit more like what people are used to. This is a sort of rejuvenized version of the old SRM SAT, which used to be in an Excel format. Many people will have used that, many people have had problems with that, which is why we tried to bring it online and improve it. It's still got the same functionality. One of the things we have people saying is, but now I can't take it away physically and I can't share it. But yes, you can download, you can print page, and you can also edit. So if you used to use the old Excel dashboards and used to fiddle around with the numbers to make sure that they were as correct as possible, you can still do that, and you can go into the edit data page. I'm not going to do that right now because it's a bit faffy and it'll take too long. But you do have all of the information about the school in much the way that we used to present it. I should say as well, you can add data for some of the school characteristics. These are things that we don't necessarily collect through a formal collection, but if you do want to put that information in yourself, you can then complete your self-assessment dashboard with some of the extra figures. If you do, by the way, submit any of that stuff, it doesn't go to the DFE, we're not collecting that. It doesn't get saved for other users, it's only saved in your own cookies. So you can download and you can share with your governors, but you're not sending out an enormous amount of information to the outside world. By the way, I do take credit for the outstanding. I don't take credit for any of that, obviously. My classes were much better than that. Right, let's go back to the homepage then. The other thing I want to show is that we also have brought a quick comparison onto the front page. The idea of the quick comparison is we go and find schools that are as similar as possible to your school and compare you to them. In this case, we've got Kingsdale, which is an inner city London school. It's got relatively high free school meals. It's got relatively high SEN, and so we've tried to find schools similar to that. And then the numbers you'll see are obviously not total expenditure, that's per pupil. We find that per pupil spending is the easiest way to compare one school to another because it controls for size, and we find this to be the most useful way. You can then again click through, but again, these are quite surface level findings, so what we'd recommend for people to do is go to a full version. Again, boost my analytics, please do so. But most importantly, you can then go much deeper into, for example, staff totals. You can go into all staff charts and see quite considerably more detail. Again, as we mentioned on the self-assessment dashboard, Kingsdale had a high spend on supply staff. That's backed up again in the quick comparison, and it's one of those ways you can check your spending in relation to others. One of the other parts we're seeking to do is make sure that you can analyse your data and then know what the next step is. So we've got links through here to deals for schools and ways in which you can actually take your data, look at where you might want to alter your spending going forwards, and then seek out offers and frameworks that the DFE has put in place. There are other aspects to this service, so we've got other tools that are interesting. They are interesting at other times in their cycle, at the very least. For example, we've got progress comparisons. Obviously, we haven't had exam results that we can use for quite a while, but one day these will be interesting again, so it might be interesting to know how to find them. Things like the efficiency metric. Next time we have exam data, we'll be able to upload a new efficiency metric, which basically takes the amount of money you're spending, the progress you're getting with your students, and puts you into a table. It's a blunt tool, and so it shouldn't be seen as a way of holding schools to account. We really don't use it for that at all. As you can see, one of the things it tells you is that if you've got a lot of money coming in because you're a central London school like Kingsdale, you do have to achieve pretty highly with that money in order to do well on the efficiency metric. So I'll show you that Kingsdale are all the way down here because of that low progress score. But it only tells you so much. It's not a perfect tool. But if anyone has thoughts on that, please do get in touch. We're always trying to improve it. I think I'm going to stop there. But there will be an opportunity for questions, and please do let me know if you've got any at the end. I'm going to hand over to Gavin. Just remember the final thing. If you're ever looking to see all of this in spreadsheet format, because you're one of those kinds of people, good on you. You can go here and you can find enormous spreadsheets with every school and academy going back to 2014-15. We get FOI'd all the time, and I have to go back and tell people the data's already out there. Please stop FOIing me. But there you go. That's it. I'm going to hand over to Gavin.
Thanks, Dan. And I'd echo that because people ask us, can you download all of the data from View Your Education Data? No, we just put it on the benchmarking site, so download it from there. Now, at this point, I'll find that it's probably kicked me out for being offline. I'll see how we go. Right, who shall I pick on? I'm going to pick on my old local authority because they haven't used this tool, and I'm not happy with them. So if you're watching afterwards, Teresa, you should have used it. So View Your Financial Insights. So as I mentioned earlier, this came very much out of a space from schools saying to us, what would be really helpful is to get straight into the analysis and get straight into some of the information about comparisons. And it also does a couple of unusual or different things with the financial data, which I'll briefly talk through. Let me pick on a random school. It's a special. Let's go for primary. I will first go to the Trust Local Authority view. So one of the things that View My Financial Insights does, and this is what came back from multi-academy trusts, primarily at the start, was that there's some great data out there as schools, but you find yourself going from one school to another school to another school. Is there a way that you can give us an overview? So we've created an overview of the organisation. So it's either a local authority with all of its maintained schools, or it's an academy trust with all of its academies. And the first thing that the tool does is it goes away and does the analytics in the background, and it just brings to the front page the 3 biggest areas where the data is an outlier compared to the 30 most similar schools. In this example, for South Tyneside, it's 3 different schools. You could find it's all at one school, it's a mixture of 2 at one and 1 at another. It could be different categories, but it will just bring to the fore the 3 most areas that the analytics say, if you're going to start somewhere, start here. And then schools can get straight into doing that analysis. This landed really, really well when we first launched the tool, but what came back as instant feedback is, well, where do I go next? What's next? So what we did is we developed this areas for investigation page. And what this does is it gives you a full listed ranking of all of your schools against all of your categories in order. And I would echo Dan's comment earlier about the RAG rating. Our users wanted it because they just felt the colour helps you draw to a particular area. It is not a judgment. It is purely there to help you see or get a context for areas that are the greatest outlier. This page is really interactive, so if you want to see the red caterings, you just click on the chart, the numbers will change and it will give you just the caterings in the table below. If you want to see the ambers on non-education support staff, you just use the graph. Similarly, you can use these buttons here and it will filter the list below, and you've got all of these filters to reduce, particularly if you're a large organisation, kind of reduce your list down by district, by school phase type or by school. And again, this was landed really well because it just helps people to go through it in a logical order and kind of see that through. Another thing that we did with the tool is we've got a cost overview. And what this does is it goes down all of the cost categories, and I will just put this on secondary just to make the graph a little easier. And I'll pop the RAG status on. So what this does is it puts all your schools by the different cost categories that are in the tool, and there are 9 in total. What it's doing with the RAG total is it's going away in the analytics and it's comparing each of its schools to its 30 closest comparators, and it's giving you the rating compared to its comparators. So it is not comparing the 4 schools on screen, it's doing each one individually in the background. And the reason behind that is that as an overview, as an organisation, you might be able to just scan down and go, do you know what, educational ICT, that's an area I probably could have a look at across my organisation and see if there's something that's going on there that I could improve on. And other areas you might want to deprioritise. Catering staff and supplies doesn't look too bad, but I might focus my energy somewhere else. So again, this gives an overview for an organisation. Historical comparison, we've got 3 years of data now within the tool, so it'll show you the trend of spend across those categories. Just draw your attention to two categories in particular within this tool, which is different to the benchmarking site, how it works. Users told us that for premises and utilities, when they were benchmarking their costs, being compared to schools with similar pupils gave some really weird results and stuff that wasn't particularly helpful or useful to take forward. So within VMFI, what we've done is when you're looking at those categories, you are looking at schools, your 30 most similar buildings to you, based on the gross internal floor area and the age of buildings. So again, there's just slightly different. You'll get slightly different messages. You'll get either per pupil if it's pupil characteristics for the other cost categories. For these, you'll get per metre squared. All of the bars, all of the charts within the tool can be shown by any of these grey buttons at the top. Percentage of school income was one that was specifically asked for by users, and again that can help sometimes if you're comparing schools in different areas. Sometimes per pupil it can be skewed because of this different funding levels. Proportion of income can just help with that understanding of that picture a bit more. So that's one of the reasons we built that in. Delving down into the school level, so from the overall picture you start to look at your individual schools. Again, when you look at a school page, you'll get the two categories which are the biggest outliers to give you a starting point, and you can go into compare your costs, and I will pick on catering, staff and services. It's quite low. Let's go and pick a different one. There's only one heading in that one. I want to show all my different headings. I'll use teachers. So within the teaching area, what you get is you get your position compared to your 30 most similar schools, and again the grey buttons are a delve down within that category. So if you're a maintained school, you send data through to us on your CFR. If you're an academy, it comes through your accounts return. The two are mirrored pretty much the same. And what we do is you should recognise some of those headings there from those returns. So that's the lowest level of granular data that we collect from you, and therefore it's the lowest level of data we can give you insight on. We've grouped these 5 under this heading, and you can just click on the graph and see different ones, education support staff. And you can see what your position is. Again, you can do a historical comparison, and you can see that what that does is then changes it, how much the trend has moved over the last 3 years. Again, it's all about just building up a picture of comparisons with similar schools. It hasn't brought it up here, but if there was a heading where your data looked like an outlier, it would give you a little message here, which is the kind of third part of my financial insights, which is help me understand my problem areas, help me understand the scale of my problem areas, what can I do about it? And this came out of users saying to us, we spend a lot of time, once we've got the data, thank you very much, help me do something about it. So what we've done, and you can just click to it directly here as well, I'll do it as a separate tab. We've got commercial resources. So when you click on it, it will take you through to the commercial resources advice and guidance that the department has on any of those particular areas. And we work with commercial colleagues to keep that updated. So again, it will tie you into frameworks the department offers. No obligation to use them, but sometimes it can help provide a benchmark, and it saves schools Googling, which is a big saving on time. A couple of other things that you can do with VMFI. Before I do that, I will just, there is one very common question, and it would be very remiss of me not to cover it, which is, who am I compared to schools? And why am I being compared with those schools? So when you click in here, you get a list of the data that's related to your school, and you get 2 lists, your pupil comparators and your building comparators. And you can select any one of those, and if you put select school below and go to comparator profile, it'll put the 2 side by side on that table. And if it's an academy, it will give you the email address of the CFO at the Academy Trust. So if you did want to start a conversation with them, you've got a link straight through. Other things you can do with My Financial Insights, if you don't like our comparators, you can create your own, and it will just work the same way with your own comparator group. You get full flexibility about who you choose to be in that. Data modelling. So one of the things that school asked us for is Sometimes the data just can be a bit anomalous for a particular year. You've had a lousy year's sickness, so your agency costs are what they are, but they're abnormally high for that year. You could use data modelling just to say, well, if I plugged in what a more normal year was, what would that do? Where would I sit in most of my comparators with that basis? Or you might be entering a new energy contract that's going to save you 10%. That'll be the day, won't it? I'm going to have to change my default on that one. But you could enter a new contract that is going to save you 10%. Again, you could use data modelling to plug in and see what the impact would that be once you pay is. So you can play around with it and use it for modelling for your own purposes. As Dan mentioned on his, anything you input here is stored locally in your machines. It's not submitted to the department, and it doesn't override the data you've submitted to the department. And finally, very quickly, curriculum and financial planning. I won't be able to go too far through this because it's on the live version, but what we've done here is we've been conscious that schools are in different places with ICFP. If you are a school that has engaged with ICFP and has a model, an effective model, and is using it, great, you crack on with that, that's perfect. This version of ICFP is targeted at those users who kind of got it on the radar but never really gone down that because they need the time and the space to think about it and they just haven't had it yet, and it's kind of niggling away in the back of the mind. What this version of ICFP does, and it's kind of we dub it ICFP Lite, is it takes the data you've already submitted to the department. So some data from your workforce census, some data from your pupil census, the financial data that's in the tool, and it starts you off. And it just asks you to say, well, what's your projection for the next couple of years across 6 or 7 headings, just add individual fields. And you'll get a starting point ICFP dashboard that just kind of will give you a bit of an overview. And from that point, it might scare you into thinking, right, I must download the proper thing and really engage with this because it's looking a bit scary. Or it might give you the reassurance that kind of you always had in the back of your mind and you just need the reassurance for. So it's designed for that kind of purpose. It's not designed to replace anything more detailed or more complex that's out there. It is very much around that target audience. And again, that's going down really well with users. So that's my financial insights. And I think we're both done, so we do have a few moments for any questions.
Clarification, really?
Yes.
So the VMFI
Yes.
is only accessible by the users for their own particular data. So if you're Southampton Council,
Yeah.
you've got access to your own stuff.
That's right, and it's all handled locally. So any organisation can set up additional users, but they will be linked to that organisation. So for South Tyneside, you'll see South Tyneside's maintained schools. If you're an Academy Trust in South Tyneside, you would have to be on the Academy Trust's information and see their schools. So it's linked to your organisation.
So this is why are we cautious about making VMFI accessible in the same way as schools?
It's a really good point, and ultimately the direction of travel might be that we just actually merge the two at some point. What came out when we first started this and when we developed VMFI was that it was very much coming from a position from what users were asking us for, and that was the users in the schools and what would help them to make better financial decisions. And at the start, there was a little bit of nervousness about, well, should this kind of level of analysis be publicly available on gov.uk? And that was one of the reasons why we thought, well, we'll put it behind a login. The other one is around the data modelling and being able to play around with it. Again, I think Dan's latest developments on the dashboard have shown that that can be done in such a way that's not publicly available, but we weren't there at the time. So we might do. And again, like as I started, all of the financial data, well, all of the data, so your finance data, your workforce data, your census data is all on various pages on gov.uk. So if any school ever comes to me and says, where did you get that information from? I'm always able to point them to something that they've submitted to say, well, we took it from there, whether it was right or not, that's where we took it from.
One thing that I've always found a little bit confusing is how does it cope with where you've got things that are outsourced with comparators So if your cleaning and catering is in-house versus a comparator that's outsourced, it always looks really skewed, I think. So is there a way around that at all?
We've tried our best, and I think we both do it the same way. So what we try to do is we group catering as a whole together, and what that means is within there you will find catering staff, and you'll find catering supplies, and you'll find catering contracts. So actually the cost of catering, irrespective of which model you take, is shown within that grouping. You can then delve down into the detail, and then you could just look at catering contracts if you're an outsourced, and you could look at your comparators based on who else has catering contract expenditure. So we try to solve it through the grouping. The other thing that we do on VMFI with catering is it's the one area where we show the catering income, so you can actually see the gross cost or you can see the net cost, which is a little bit of a proxy for your cost of free school meals. So yeah, that's the way we try to crack it, and try to just group all of the costs together. So no matter which model you go down, you can kind of see yourselves compared.
Firstly, thanks, Dan, Gavin, for a really interesting talk. And I think this tool certainly adds a lot of value to the sector, just from what you've shown today. My question is about how you best utilise it and link it to the wider school resource management offer. Do you find that most schools or academies will know exactly what they want to be more efficient in, be that estate or workforce, and access the offer that way? Or do they tend to go through these tools and then through looking at the analytics are told, well, this is where you can save the most money, and go through it that way? Because to me, a great way of incorporating this within the department's wider offer could be to use it as kind of the gateway to the school resource management offer, rather than one of the existing tools that SRM offer.
Yeah, we definitely try to do that. Our analytics aren't quite developed enough to see the throughput of traffic to kind of have some MI that backs up what we're hearing on the ground. We'd like to do that, very much so. We certainly on both tools provide links to commercial resources and advice and other things we have there, and we definitely see our products right at the heart of SRM. So that if schools are recognised as an area that they would like to, they need to become more efficient in, or would like to try to see whether they could become more efficient in, then we like to try to make sure that we signpost. So one of the kind of key things we try to do is just make sure we're at the heart of everything. So we point within our tools to teacher vacancy service, we point to obviously all the commercial stuff, we point to RPA. So we do try to do that. We do try to find ways of improving that. I'll be honest, sometimes would love our colleagues to tell us what they're up to. Our ideal world is that when something appears in the update bulletin that goes out, we're already across it and have some way found a link to put into the tools as well. One little thing that we do on, there's nothing in there at the moment, but we have a little message board in VMFI, which we use from time to time. So sometimes when you log on, there'll be a little blue box at the top, which will point you to something that's happening. And we tend to try and focus that on some of the SRM areas as well. So we're trying it. I'd probably say it's in its infancy, and we'd love to develop it much further. I mean, some of my heart around this is we've got a lot of data about who the users are. So when they click through to something, could we get to a point where some of that's pre-populated already? So you only have to add little bits in around whatever it is you're wanting to procure, and not have to re-enter who you are again and again. That's maybe pie in the sky, but it's something on my heart to try and do. But yeah, it's a great question and something we are really keen to try and do. Just got time. Oh, yeah, I was just about to say, I've just got time for one question. The hand went up at the back.
Thanks. There's always this balance between historic benchmarking and current year benchmarking, and I'd just like to know your thoughts on it, really, because my governor's very keen on current year benchmarking.
It's access to data. I mean, absolutely. It's access to data is the key thing. I mean, we only get the data from you some months after year end, and that's the time we can start to do something with it. We think we're uniquely placed because we get data from everybody. So we think we're uniquely placed to do it. over the years, we've certainly over the last 5 years, we've tried to shorten our time handling the data. I think we're in a good place for the academy sector. We're in a less good place for maintained sector. And I was just chatting downstairs with a colleague about, come on guys, we need to get better in this space. So I think we can shorten the time that from between we get the data and we put it out. I think we are always going to have difficulties, or it'll need to be a bit of a sea change or something, a different approach where the department has access to current data from everybody and then can use it to support what your governors are after.
Can I have a suggestion on that? Would you be able to put something in data modelling, so if we're looking at a particular expenditure area, we could put in our current in-year forecast?
Yeah.
So we could then do something with your information and our current year?
We could certainly look at that. That's certainly something we could take away. The tool has been developed primarily to compare data with other schools. So because we've not got that data for other schools, that's kind of the reason it's not there. But if that's something that users would find helpful in terms of supporting their own internal processes, we can certainly have a look at it.
You can to some extent do that on the benchmarking site, in that you can go into the dashboard and you can edit a page and you can do a future plan. The issue is, if you start comparing yourself to last year's teaching staff bandings, they are going to change year on year with inflation. And so you won't necessarily be comparing yourself to like for like, because we don't have everyone else's future planning. It's just a difficulty of the situation we're in.
We're under strict orders to finish on time, so you can all get upstairs to listen to the Minister and not head for the exit in the sunshine.
Of course you can.
Thank you so much for your time. I hope you found that helpful.
Really good presentation, very useful. I tried to find a way of doing this. I was getting to get a list of all the single academies, so non-maths schools.